Hello, my high school students. Thank you for joining me today for another Health and Family Life Education lesson. I am Wendy Mullings, Health and Family Life Education Officer from Region 7, located in the parish of Clarendon. Today, we have a special lesson to commemorate and highlight a significant day. Let me give you a hint. It involves a big red ribbon. Shh! Don't tell me the answer as yet. Before you tell me the name of this significant day, let us listen to Rihanna Cowan, second form student from Glenmuir High, sing the song Heal the World.
There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love. And this place could be much brighter than tomorrow. And if you really try, you find there's no need to cry. In this place, you feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space, make a better place. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying if you care enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. If you want to know why, there's a love that cannot lie. Love is strong, it only cares for joyful giving. If we try, we shall see. In this place we cannot feel fear of dread. Stop existing and start living. Then it feels like always love enough for us growing. So make a better world, make a better world. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying if you care enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. And the world we once conceived in will reveal a joyful face. And the world we once believed in will shine again in grace. Then why do we keep strangling life? Would the serve crucify it so? Till it's plain to see this world is heaven. Be God's goal. We could fly so high, let our spirits never die. In my heart, I feel you are all my brothers. Create a world with no fear. Together we'll cry happy tears. See the nations turn their swords into plowshares. We could really get there if we cared enough for the living. Make a little space to make a brighter place. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying if you care enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying if you care enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. 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 Heal the world we live in. Save it for our children. Heal the world we live in. Save it for our children. Heal the world we live in. Save it for our children.
Rihanna, you have such a beautiful voice. Thank you for reminding us that by our actions, we are able to heal the world and make it a better place. Such an inspiring and timely song, especially as we go through this COVID-19 pandemic. The value for today's lesson is shared responsibility, and the life skill is advocacy. At the end of the lesson, students, you should be able to explain your understanding of global solidarity. Evaluate at least 3 effects of stigma and discrimination affecting persons living with HIV and other global health issues. Justify the importance of shared responsibility to address global health issues. And the last objective, demonstrate the ability to use advocacy skill to encourage shared responsibility supportive actions for persons living with HIV. To help us to understand global solidarity, shared responsibility, we have with us a special guest from National Family Planning Board, Ms. Shushan Stewart. Ms. Stewart is the Behavior Change Communication Coordinator. She is here to give us an insight on World AIDS Day.
Hi Wendy, you're most welcome. In fact, NFPB welcomes this opportunity to share with your adolescent audience important information on sexual reproductive health.
Hi Shushan, thank you for joining me today in our HFLE lesson for our secondary students.
So World AIDS Day is a day of observance, and it also allows the country to highlight our progress to other countries across the world, our efforts as it relates to addressing HIV and AIDS. Additionally, on this day, we are able to stand with our brothers and sisters, those persons who are either affected or infected with the virus. Additionally to that, on this day, December 1, we are able to use it as a day of remembrance for everybody who would have passed on due to HIV/AIDS.
Shushan, I want you to give me a background of World AIDS Day by simply telling me, what is World AIDS Day?
So locally, we are following the lead from the Joint UN Nation, which is the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, and utilizing their theme that they would have selected, as it is very much applicable to the situation and the space and time, in this space and time for our country.
So you are saying the issues experienced in COVID-19 pandemic are the same for HIV pandemic. Give me examples of how stigma and discrimination have negatively impacted both pandemics.
Right, so UNAIDS explains that the COVID pandemic has essentially highlighted, and brought to the forefront for us many of the challenges that we are seeing in the health system being played out with other critical issues. And these issues, include stuff like human rights. So for the human rights and the ability to access healthcare throughout the COVID pandemic, especially for us, we would have seen many instances in the news where persons who, want to access the healthcare system but are either turned away. And this goes similarly for persons who are infected with HIV. So in addition to the healthcare system and as it relates to human rights, we are also looking at challenges such as social protection. So after trying to access the healthcare system and you're unable to, to successfully access the system, you would require some sort of redress system. How do you go about making or lodging your complaint, or trying to get some headway after not getting proper treatment? So we're looking at social protection, as I mentioned, human rights, and then we're also looking at the economic growth situation. I'm sorry about that. So as it relates to economic growth, we right there and then we realized as the pandemic hit, we had a number of persons, and I mean a number of your parents probably would have been laid off, or working on shifts or working from home. So we had a great depth of jobs being lost, and this would have affected our economic growth for the country. Other issues would have also included inequality, and when we're looking at inequality, so this really speaks to issues of stigma and discrimination and gender-based violence. So for stigma and discrimination, really what that speaks about is persons who are either positive with COVID-19 or HIV positive. I mean, persons would have been treating them some sort of way, that. So how do I best to explain this? So without saying the word stigmatized, so persons would have been shunning them away or treating them ill because they might feel as if that they are positive, or even if they are positive. And persons who are more likely to face this sort of inequality are those persons who are deemed are most vulnerable. So these persons would essentially suffer the most from this harsh treatment.
With those examples, I can definitely see the urgent need to eliminate stigma and discrimination. How has gender inequality and or gender normative struggles impacted the HIV pandemic in Jamaica?
It's the stigma and discrimination, for COVID-19 and the HIV virus. Persons are basically shunned. Once it is known that the person is HIV positive or COVID-19 positive, persons run the risk of being shunned from their communities or their workplaces because persons do not want to become infected. It's a little different though for HIV, because for COVID-19 we have to maintain the 6 feet physical distance spacing, try to reduce contact, wash our hands, wear our mask. But for HIV, this is a sexual infection. So as it relates to being shunned and experiencing stigma and discrimination, that would be more evident when persons are unaware of how HIV is passed on. But we still have a number of myths going around on how it is passed on. So persons, once it is known, persons will definitely experience some sort of stigma and discrimination. And having known that, this really feeds into the other point. And my other point on this would be the fear of basically wanting to know their status, because if it is that they are now aware of their status, they're basically afraid of what other persons would want to think, how their family would react, how their friends would react, what would happen to them at work. So they do not self-identify. They don't come out and get the COVID-19 test, and this puts everybody at a greater risk, right? So they don't come out and get the COVID-19 test. They don't access the healthcare system or outreach centers and be tested for HIV. So having not known puts both that individual and persons in the wider community at risk, because they may be able, if they're having unprotected sex, then the virus will be passed on. If it is that they're not wearing a mask, if they're not maintaining their 6 feet distance, especially when they're amongst their families, they will pass on the virus. So that in itself is an issue that we're facing, and maybe the fear of being discriminated against is what holds the person back from being tested, for either COVID-19 or the HIV virus. Also, with this fear, in some really adverse cases, we might see a person being violent against another person once the positive results is accessed. So once the person realizes that they are positive, they are afraid of being discriminated violently. So whether it's being put out of their community or being just physically abused by community members or their partner or friends, because we do have instances of this.
That is really concerning. We also need to do more for our women. Shushan, how can we use the value of shared responsibility to get rid of some of these issues that we have discussed to aid the process of eradicating both HIV and COVID-19 pandemics?
Right. So, what best explains this as it relates to gender inequality and how it has impacted the HIV epidemic in Jamaica? We can look on relationships in general. And when we are looking at relationships, we can look at the power struggle and the power dynamics within any heterosexual relationship. So and the age difference within this relationship also helps to propel the epidemic. So when we are looking at having a young female being in a relationship with an older male, this young female may want to use a condom, right, within the relationship to protect herself from getting pregnant or contracting an STI, including HIV. She is unable to negotiate with her older partner, the male, to say, hey, let's use a condom for these number of reasons. The male would definitely know, more than likely say to her, why is that you want to use a condom? Is it that you have another partner with me? Do you think that I'm cheating on you? And this level of conversation would basically build up some amount of fear in the female, and it goes for both ways. If we're having a younger male and an older female, or a younger female and an older male, the power dynamics within the relationship for the young underside of the younger person basically is what allows the person to be at a greater risk, because they are not able to negotiate condom use within the relationship. So, and if it is that the relationship now doesn't have the barrier of an age difference, and it's a relationship where persons are within the same age group, what will likely to happen is what we've seen from our recent KAPB, is that the number one reason for not using a condom in relationship is love and trust. Because they might start in the relationship and they might start out with a condom and everything is going fine. But then a couple months down the line, or probably a couple weeks down the line, both persons decide to stop using a condom. Why? Because, and me and you one day, I'm gonna love you, I'm gonna trust you, so there's no need to use a condom, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So now the condom use has stopped, and then either person in the relationship might want to go back to using a condom, but then fear comes in now. And if the conversation does come up, the other person in the relationship will say, will likely to say, oh, why is that you want to use a condom now? Is that you're cheating on me? Or do you think I'm cheating on you? So these are some of the issues that, would have impacted our HIV epidemic in the country. And it's basically the absence of condom use.
Shushan, I really appreciate you sharing this wealth of information, and I am hoping our students will be the stewards and role models to end stigma and discrimination, promote gender equality, and advocate for human rights for all.
Definitely, Wendy. So one of the ways, or a number of the ways, that we could utilize to get rid of some of these issues that we have discussed earlier, in order to try to reduce it, is really, in our country we have a saying where "Anna my business," or people business and my business, and a business in a man and woman affair. We really need to stop that. We really need to, put aside that cultural belief, and, to try be more of take on a more religious belief, where the Bible says we ought to be our brother's keeper. And in being our brother's keeper, it basically means where we have to look out for each other. We have a responsibility to, share with our brother, to be able to provide some sort of guidance and support, to love and to care for our brothers and sisters. So if we are being, more of our brother's keeper, then this would allow us basically to share experiences, right? So if I am going through something right now and you are probably going through the same thing, if we are talking to each other and sharing our experiences, then I wouldn't have to go through it alone. You wouldn't have to go through it alone, and probably somebody else wouldn't have to go through it any at all, because you would have learned from my experience and you wouldn't be able to make the same mistake, right? Additionally, we need to protect each other and those who are most vulnerable around us, right? So we have to follow the protocols that are placed out in front of us, that are set out by the Ministry of Health. These protocols are there for a reason, right? So for HIV, we need to stick to one faithful, uninfected partner, right? We need to make sure that we're using our condom and using our condom correctly and consistently. That is what is important for us, right? If we're not doing that, then we're contributing to the epidemic in itself. We're contributing to the virus. We're contributing to the burden on the healthcare system. We're contributing to all of these things essentially. Also with COVID-19, we have to be responsible for ourselves and our brothers and sisters, for our families, for our friends. We have to maintain our physical distance 6 feet apart. We have to wear our masks once we are around the persons, once we're going out. We have to wash our hands frequently and, wash our hands properly. By now, everybody should know how to wash their hands properly. Really, because normally, we just go to the pipe and, do a quick wash, but we have to wash our hands properly, because having, maintaining our social distance and washing our hands and wearing our mask, this will definitely allow to stem the spread, reduce the spread of the virus, so that we can go back to some sort of normalcy. We have to get used to it. It's going to take a while, but once we adhere to these steps, then we will be good.
Through these responses, we will be able to reduce the disastrous impact of pandemics such as HIV and COVID-19. Please keep safe and well, Lady Stewart. Thank you once again. Global solidarity is a worldwide call to recognize each individual person as part of one human family, regardless of ethnic, national, racial, gender, economic, political, or ideological differences. This is telling us that whether we are addressing HIV or COVID-19 pandemic or any other illnesses, we need to come together to provide support and eradicate obstacles that will prevent persons from getting the medical assistance they need. We are called not only to recognize the dignity of each individual person, but also to fully respect that person's or group's human dignity in our daily lives by seeing and understanding others as our brothers and sisters for whom we have a shared responsibility. The issue of stigma and discrimination is a sore for persons living with HIV, and we're also seeing its negative impact in dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. Let us quickly recap the definitions for HIV stigma and discrimination. HIV stigma is negative attitudes and beliefs about people with HIV. It is the prejudice that comes with labeling an individual as part of a group that is believed to be socially unacceptable. Here are a few examples. Believing that only certain groups of people can get HIV, making moral judgments about people who take steps to prevent HIV transmission, and feeling that people deserve to get HIV because of their choices. While stigma refers to an attitude or belief, discrimination is the behaviors that result from those attitudes or beliefs. HIV discrimination is the act of treating people living with HIV differently from those without. Here are a few examples. A healthcare professional refusing to provide care or services to a person living with HIV. Refusing casual contact with someone living with HIV. Socially isolating a member of a community because they are HIV positive. Referring to people as HIVers or positive or AIDS boy is another way of discrimination. Some unfounded beliefs about persons living with HIV that will lead to stigma and discrimination are: HIV and AIDS are always associated with death. HIV is associated with behaviors that some people disapprove of, such as homosexuality, drug use, sex work, or infidelity. HIV is only transmitted through sex, which is a taboo subject in some cultures. HIV infection is a result of personal responsibility or moral fault, such as infidelity, that deserves to be punished. Inaccurate information about how HIV is transmitted, which creates irrational behavior and misperceptions of personal risk. What will happen to a person living with HIV as a result of stigma and discrimination? HIV stigma and discrimination affect the emotional well-being and mental health of people living with HIV. People living with HIV often internalize the stigma they experience and begin to develop a negative self-image. They may fear they will be discriminated against or judged negatively if their HIV status is revealed. HIV internalized stigma can lead to feelings of shame, fear of disclosure, isolation, and despair. These feelings can keep people from getting tested and treated for HIV. Not getting treated and not getting tested will keep the HIV pandemic alive. The more we get the facts about HIV, the less discriminatory we will become, and then we are able to treat persons living with HIV as normal human beings. Based on common human rights, we need to show support for persons living with HIV so they can live as equal members of our community. They are entitled to the same rights at school, work, in churches, and being in public or private spaces. Shared responsibility is asking us to show collaborative support through engaging in similar actions and activities that will end stigma and discrimination to ensure human rights for all. Please write down this reflective question in your HFLE journal. So I'm asking you to get your HFLE journal and write down this question. How can shared responsibility help me to be more supportive of persons who are affected by illnesses such as HIV and COVID-19? You're going to answer this question and then share it with a friend, a family member, or your HFLE teacher. The life skill advocacy is a useful tool to encourage us to have shared responsibility in promoting support for persons living with HIV. Students, please listen keenly to the definition and steps of advocacy skill.
Hello everyone, my name is Shayla. Let us talk about the life skill advocacy. You may be wondering, what is advocacy skill? Advocacy skill is the ability to effectively communicate or assert the interests, needs, or rights of yourself or another person. As you know, each life skill has steps. So, what are the steps of advocacy skill? There are 6 steps. Step 1. Identify the problem or issue that needs changing. Step 2. State what you want to achieve. Step 3. Identify who needs to be influenced to achieve this change. For step 4, you are going to gather accurate information that will appeal to intended audience. Step 5, you're going to suggest various ways to address the problem or situation. Look at that! We are now at our final step, step 6. Develop key messages or tools to influence intended audience. I am so ready to be an advocate. I am so ready to speak out for the rights of myself and others. Are you ready to develop your advocacy skill? Of course you are. Let's do this. Take it from me. With advocacy skill, you got this.
Now that we have heard the definition and steps of advocacy life skill, let us apply it to our lesson by matching these steps to their correct statement that will show us how to put advocacy skill into action. So here we have the table with 2 columns, the first with the steps and the second with the statements. We are going to accurately match by placing the number of the step beside the statement that identifies what will be done or what can be done. Step 1. Identify the problem issue that needs changing. So which statement on the right identify with our first step? Get the facts about HIV and do not let myths cause you to be stigmatized and discriminate? No. Let us quickly scroll down. So the problem is to eliminate stigma and discrimination towards persons living with HIV. You are correct. Number 1 will be at our 4th statement. Step 2. State what you want to achieve. What do you need to achieve? Let us look at which statement on the right matches the second step. To ensure our actions reflect global solidarity and shared responsibility towards persons living with HIV. So if you have identified the last statement, you are correct. That matches with step 2. Step 3. Identify who needs to be influenced with this change. Obviously, everyone. That is the 3rd statement. So the 3rd statement matches with step number 3. Step 4. Gather accurate information that will appeal to intended audience. As we look over on the right, let us scroll down quickly and see which statement matches step 4. Are you saying statement number 5? Yes, you are correct. Statement number 5. Compile information from valid HIV websites and organizations to grab the interest of social media users. Very good.